You've written this letter to ABC News demanding answers about why they spiked their story on Jeffrey Epstein as complained about by Amy Robach. What business is it of yours as the House Minority Leader to push ABC News to explain its editorial decisions?
Remember, what I'm asking right now are questions. I'm not trying to get into their editorial requirements, but don't they have a moral responsibility to notify the authorities? Now when I see a person who works at ABC to say she had a story 3 years ago of a known pedophile who's already pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution, and somehow there's been undue influence, I don't know that there is, but it's worth asking the question, because how many more minors had to be human trafficked because they didn't do their stuff?
But what do you do when they write back saying, you're not our news director, we have freedom of the press, and we also have a reporter privilege, at least in the state of New York, that doesn't require us to show you anything?
They don't have to give me from editorial, but why did they work so hard to call another network to fire someone they thought leaked it? I wish they would work this hard to look at themselves from a moral perspective. If somebody was a principal in a school and found this information, they may not have to go do an editorial about it, but wouldn't they go tell an authority?
But they have a duty to report. News organizations don't have a duty to report and may have a duty not to report a story if they can't shore it up with the appropriate sources.
She had a victim that had pictures. She spent a lot of time at it. And then someone told her not to, but she also talks about outside influence, that maybe they might not get an interview somewhere else if they ran this story. And remember who we're talking about. Epstein was very powerful. He's known as he may go down in history as one of the biggest pedophiles around the world. So I would take, from ABC's point of view, I would want to make sure you never make this mistake. I think you would take these questions and want to answer them. Why were they so quick to call CBS? Why did they want to get somebody fired? I mean, that raises another question.
Well, you mentioned the woman who was fired from CBS after the call from ABC. That's Ashley Bianco. Do you believe she should get her job back?
Well, yes. I don't think anybody should be fired without first, what was the reason why? And
she didn't leak the tape.
I watched her interview with you. Ashley said she did not leak the tape, Bianco. She said, yes, she worked at ABC. She said, yes, she clipped it and put it aside, but she never leaked it.
Well, and somebody else
CBS.
has come forward, although anonymously, because this person's worried about their job, saying, I am the leaker. Ashley Bianco's not the leaker.
See, every part of this story brings you more questions.
So ABC News chose not to report the Epstein story in 2015 or thereafter. And in your letter, you accuse them of enabling Epstein. But couldn't the same be said of many news organizations that decided not to pursue this story and other organizations, right? I mean, you've got Vanity Fair looked into it, Gawker looked into it. I'm sure other news organizations besides ABC did. Not to mention law enforcement, right? That had the guy in its clutches back in 2008 and gave him a sweetheart deal.
Well, I think everybody should look at this. Human trafficking is one of the most offensive things you can do to a minor. So a victim comes forward and goes to a network of ABC. They're risking a great deal. Now the question would be to any network or news agency, what did you just do to any further victims? Would they come forward, or are they going to stay away?
Well, you know how it is, and ABC hasn't told us what their evidence was at the time, but who knows? There may have been credibility problems with the witness, not to impugn her, but you'd have to look into exactly what they knew and when they knew it, right? I mean, you can't be news director for the nation sitting here.
I would want them to look at and go back and analyze. Did we miss something here?
So what happens if they blow you off, ABC?
Well, I think as a legislator and as somebody that serves in Congress, knowing this human trafficking, that it's a bipartisan issue, I think we should have hearings on it. Because we're talking about lives. We're talking about young women. We're talking about people who do not have a voice.
So what do? You press Nadler, the head of Judiciary, the Democrat, to
Well, if you
hold a
watched
hearing?
on this letter, we had the ranking member, Doug Collins, from Judiciary. We also had the ranking member of Foreign Affairs, because this is a worldwide problem. All these committees can have hearings on this. We can raise the issue. And again, I'm not accusing ABC of anything. I actually want to work with them. I just think these questions have to be asked.
But where does it stop, right? Where does it stop? Because there was just a story at NBC about them allegedly spiking the Harvey Weinstein expose Ronan Farrow had done. According to Ronan, it was to protect what he claims was a known predator inside the building, Matt Lauer. NBC has denied that. But you could be doing this at many news shops, presumably. Why didn't you do this story? Why didn't you do more to protect women, to protect young women?
I think we've all, looking at America today and the Me Too movement, I would hope that every company, every agency, every person would relook at have they fallen short at one time or another.
But that's very, pie in the sky, right? But
it's not pie in the sky.
But they might say it's none of your business, right? We got freedom of the press, we got editorial standards, we got to have 2 sources, sometimes 3, and we have to go running to Kevin McCarthy.
I'm not asking him to run to me, but I'm asking internally, just from a moral issue. This is human trafficking. How many more children? We're talking minor, we're talking young women.
Same question to you, though, about the Department of Justice, because they had Epstein in 2007 and 2008. They had, we now know, 34 accusers come forward against him then, and he got a slap on the wrist, a sweetheart plea deal, 13 months in prison. And the question is, why? Why did the FBI, why did the DOJ give him that deal?
Those are the questions that we've been asking, too. And
but the point is, the feds also, they had more information than anybody else did as of 2008, and they didn't do anything.
Fair question. That's what we're asking. Think about who Epstein knew, too. Think about who was in office at that time, too. Did anybody put undue influence there? That's why in this question I asked, was there any outside influence that came into your decision-making process? And I want to know if that happened from government to somebody else, if that happened in any shape or form.
Trump's then Labor Secretary, Acosta, basically lost his job in the administration after it came out that he was the assistant U.S. attorney. He was the U.S. attorney on the case pursuing Epstein at the time. So he was out. And then your colleagues in the Congress said, well, let's investigate how this happened. And the DOJ, Bill Barr, said, I'll do it. I'll take a look internally to figure out how he got this deal when he had the 34 minor.
And he's looking into it.
So what's the status of that, right? What do we know?
Well, I don't think they're going to end it in one day, the status. Bill Barr is looking into this. Now, I would want ABC to do the exact same thing. And that's why I'm asking the questions.
So if they say no, you're going to push for hearings?
Yes.
Might we be seeing hearings on NBC as well?
When we take on these hearings, we should ask the tough questions. And if we find it takes us to another location, we should ask them as well.
Is that a yes?
That's a yes.